Good evening, America, and welcome to this Just the News, Real America's Voice special report, Legislating for Life, the next 12 months. I'm your host, John Solomon, and tonight, in partnership with our sponsor, Heritage Action for America, we are going to explore and discuss the Supreme Court's recent decision to overturn Roe v. Wade and return the question of whether to allow abortions back to the states. Now, despite an inside source leaking the draft decision to the mainstream media, causing irrefutable institutional damage, on June 24, 2022, the United States Supreme Court took decisive action with Justice Alito releasing the court's majority 6-3 decision reversing Roe v. Wade. The landmark case, titled Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization, has touched off a political firestorm in our country. In some cases, conservative Supreme Court justices have had their lives threatened, like Brett Kavanaugh. Pro-life and pro-choice groups continue to march in the streets in major cities to advocate for the right to life or to choose. And with citizens in the street, professional lobbyists, lawyers, doctors, and activists continue to negotiate with state lawmakers and governors, as it's now incumbent upon the states to write or rewrite their laws ahead of the November elections. And with those midterm elections looming, registered U.S. voters consider this to be a bigger issue than it has been in prior election years. Recent polling found that 27% of registered voters say their candidate must share the same view as them on abortion, while 54% of voters say it will be one of the many important factors when they cast a ballot. Symbolic measures have also haven't slowed down at the federal level either. Just 2 weeks ago, Speaker Nancy Pelosi held a vote in the House to codify a woman's right to an abortion, which passed. However, the Senate Majority Leader, Schumer's chamber, failed to pass the Women's Health Protection Act in May, so that has come to a standstill. Now, our first guest tonight is not only a U.S. Senator who voted against the federal law to legalize abortion, he also is a proud conservative father and grandfather who has worked in healthcare as a physician and delivered, get a load of this, delivered more than 5,000 babies, many from the great state of Kansas. Referred to him affectionately as Doc Marshall. He is Senator Roger Marshall. Senator, great to have you on the show today.
John, I can't wait. A great topic here. We're the voice for those who don't have a voice. Thanks for all that you do. And I know your listeners are going to learn something today, and we just look forward to sharing a message of hope with them.
Yeah, this is such an important issue, and it's also important to get rid of a lot of the myths that surround this issue, because there's a lot of them built up in the media. But I want to start with something you did right at the beginning of this legislative session. You introduced a bill to protect life, to protect the life of the unborn. Tell us a little bit about that and where it stands in the Senate.
Well, protecting life up here is certainly a challenge. And we're going to do whatever we can to protect life. I believe life begins at conception. Let me just say that up front. A pro-life physician, I've always been pro-life. That's what I was taught in Bible school. So we look forward to protecting life whatever level we can. Certainly the challenges going forward, though, is just stopping this radical left agenda, abortion on demand of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, absolutely. People are really fired up to have that conversation, to have that debate. And of course, it occurs in the shadows of a very important election where the control of Congress is clearly up for grabs. Your take on what you think where voters are on this and how big a role this might play in the upcoming elections?
Well, certainly the issue of life is important to Christians and so many people everywhere. But really back home, the issue is inflation, inflation, inflation. It's the price of gasoline. I think that this will be battled out at the state levels now, the life issue. So I think it's if you really based upon surveying, it's not the determining factor for very many people. It's maybe number 7, 8, or 9 for most people in determining who they're going to vote for. So it's personally very important to me and many Christians, but maybe not as important as the price of gasoline is to others.
Yes, I think that's right. And the polling that we're all beginning to see. Now, that said, there are a lot of myths about this in this debate, many of them created by the media. There's the question of, well, people who have ectopic pregnancies now may not be able to get help, that it's automatically banned in all 50 states. You served in those emergency rooms delivering babies in the maternity wards. Tell us about some of the myths and the truths that you saw as a doctor on the front lines.
Right, John. Well, we were taught the very first week of residency, don't let the sun set on an ectopic pregnancy. An ectopic pregnancy is life-threatening. The moment you diagnose it, you need to be making a plan to take care of the situation. taking care of an ectopic pregnancy is not an abortion. I think the Catholic Church agrees with that. Every minister I talk to agrees with that. Theologians of the Bible all agree that taking care of an ectopic pregnancy is not an abortion, and the mother's life is truly at stake. And the other myth out there is taking care of miscarriages. Look, unfortunately, I took care of miscarriages every week. 1 out of 3 women have had a miscarriage. Some studies say 1 out of 2 women have had a miscarriage. So your doctors are still going to take care of women with ectopic pregnancies, with miscarriages. And I think they're going to have the full blessing of the church behind them. And certainly I feel very comfortable going forward that pro-life doctors have always taken care of miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies. They're going to continue to do that going forward.
Yeah, so that's just a big red herring that's been bantied about in the media the last few weeks. It's really shameful. It's good to get the straight story on that from someone who knows. In March of this year, you introduced the Ultrasound-Informed Consent Act, requiring abortion providers to perform an obstetric ultrasound and make the heartbeat audible before abortion. Tell us a little bit why you did that and how much of that is based on your experience in the delivery room.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying that half of women that see an ultrasound of their baby will decide not to have the abortion. And I think when they do that ultrasound, they see that this baby is a real living being. It's got a heartbeat. Oftentimes, by the time they're seeing the sonogram, the baby has fingers and toes. And even like at 15 weeks, 14, 15 weeks, you see the baby start responding to the mother's voice, where you'll see the baby's heart rate pick up when the baby hears mom talk, or maybe there's a brother or sister in the room. And we kind of push on the abdomen of the mom to try to get the baby in a different angle. We'll kind of see the baby push back. So I think it just really, a picture paints 1,000 words, right? So what I'm really concerned about right now are these abortion pills. There's doctors from out of the country that are setting up telemedicine, and they're prescribing these abortion pills without doing sonograms first. They have no idea how far along the baby really is. So I think that giving those abortion pills, they're only approved, I think, up to about 11 weeks. I've never used them, but I think what the FDA says is about 11 weeks. And after 11 weeks, they're not as effective. So I think that this medicine could cause anomalies for the baby as well, fetal anomalies, and not cause the miscarriage. The further along you are, the less effective the drug is at causing the abortion, but it might cause birth defects. So I'm always trying to protect the mom and the baby, John. That's what my whole life has been centered around professionally, is to protect and take care, to fight for the life of mom and baby.
Yeah, such an important mission. I want to turn to the abortion industry for a second. A few years ago, one of your colleagues, Senator Chuck Grassley, made a referral to the Justice Department based on some pretty compelling evidence that groups like Planned Parenthood may have been selling fetal tissue from abortions illegally into the marketplace. Not much has happened. It sort of came to a standstill. But based on all of your experience, what do you see as some of the ethical issues inside the abortion industry today?
Well, certainly Planned Parenthood is an abortion clinic. I'm just going to share a quick story with your listeners. Nurse came and got me in the middle of a busy day and said there's a 14-year-old girl in room number whatever it was, and she's crying. She's really upset. And I said, okay, great. I walked in and I said, well, tell me what's going on, young lady. And she said, well, I went to Planned Parenthood to get a pregnancy test, and they scheduled her for an abortion. And she was in my office saying, I don't want an abortion. Do I have to go through with that abortion? And, unfortunately, that story plays out, that Planned Parenthood really is an abortion clinic. The Planned Parenthood is closing down in all these trigger law states. They said they're there for women to help with family planning and this and their health and all this, but really they're abortion clinics. That's, I think, the super huge amount of their money is from that. They don't care about the health of the mom. I'm very concerned going forward. As I was before, Kansas passed laws to help protect the health of the mom. But going forward in the legislation that Nancy Pelosi wants to pass, they want to allow abortions to be done in non-surgical suites. So they can be done in a hotel room. They can be done in a garage. They're not holding them up to standards. They're going to let non-doctors do the abortions as well. So really, the abortion industry has no bounds on what they might do.
Yeah, it's remarkable to see. And there was an amazing report out of Minnesota recently that just went into all the statistics of the abortion industry and what happens in each instance. Very eye-opening. So you're clearly a man of great deep faith. Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and others claim to have that same faith, but they're on the other side of this argument on abortion. How do people who go to church and are told that abortion's unethical, immoral, still go into the public square and try to defend it? How frustrating is that to see that in your own chamber?
Yeah, John, I really struggle. We know it's a sin to take communion if we don't confess our sins. I don't have an explanation. We're told not to judge people, and certainly it's not my job to judge other folks. But then I think there's other places where Paul said, look, if there's people within your church that are not being faithful, then they need to be pushed out of the church as well. So I'm just at a loss to say it. It struggles in my heart how a person could take communion after encouraging and providing for abortions. I don't get it. God will have to be the judge, not me.
Yeah, that is good advice. Well, sir, it is a great honor. I know next year, if Republicans get control of Congress, a lot of these legislations you put together are finally going to get the attention that they deserve and the progress that they deserve. We're going to be following that real closely right here.
Thanks, John. And I want to ask your listeners to go to our website, marshall.senate.gov. Sign up for a newsletter. People ask me all the time, where can I get news that you can rely upon? So my staff does a really good job of trying to speak just the truth, give just the news. So that's marshall.senate.gov. I've enjoyed being on with you and just wish the best and going forward with this fight, trying to protect the sanctity of life.
That's a really valuable resource, folks. Go check it out, Senator. Thank you. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, more discussion about the extraordinary debate in America over abortion rights. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back, America, to our special report. Joining us now is a special guest. She's not only a representative for the great state of Florida, but she's also the co-chair of the Pro-Life Caucus in Congress. Joining us right now, Congresswoman Kat Cammack. Congresswoman, great to have you on the show today.
Hey, thank you so much, John. Pleasure to be with you.
Always an honor to have you. I want to start, you've had an opportunity over the last month to spend a lot of time with young conservatives, first at the Turning Point USA women's event, and then more recently with the Young Republican Leadership Summit. There is a narrative in media that all the Gen Zers, all the millennials are pro-abortion, and I'm not sure that's true. I'm curious if you walked away from those two events and other interactions you have with a different portrait than what the mainstream media has given us.
No, I actually think that what I have found is that my generation, being a millennial, and the generation coming up right behind me, the Gen Zers, we are the post-Roe pro-life generation, because we believe that every life has value, and we believe in science. And it has been incredible that not only have I championed this for so long, but then to actually be a member of Congress when the court ruled that Roe would be overturned, returning this issue back to the states. It's been incredible. And I think you see so many young people who are hungry to really take a stand for faith, for family, to take a stand for science and for liberty for all, recognizing that just now the law is catching up to the science. And so it's so encouraging to see young people out there fighting for life, fighting for all these issues and the values that we have as true conservatives. It truly has been humbling, and it has been very, very exciting. But there's a lot more work to go. Being pro-life doesn't mean just when you're in the womb. It means from the tomb to the womb. And so we are all the way through looking at ways that we can be supportive of the pro-life movement as a pro-life advocate. But I am truly, truly excited for what is to come out of this generation today.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about both the laws and the science, and there's a law in Minnesota that's given us visibility to something we haven't seen for a long time. There's an annual report now that must be issued by the Minnesota Health Department, and last year it revealed, actually this month they revealed that last year there were 5 botched abortions in which an infant survived past the procedure, and all 5 of those cases, the doctors performing that didn't provide life support to the newborn infant, basically allowing that child to die. When you hear that, that's the sort of thing that used to be kept secret below the radar. Is there more that needs to be done in the legislative realm and perhaps larger in the culture of life to make sure those things don't happen in the future?
Absolutely. My stomach just turns, seeing that report flash on the screen, because this is actually an issue that beginning of last year, as a brand new member of Congress, my colleague Ann Wagner and Representative Steve Scalise, the three of us, we led a discharge petition called the Abortion Survivor Protection Act. And what it does is it actually mandates that any provider who is performing an abortion and that child survives that abortion, they have to immediately provide life-saving care. But one step further, every single medical professional in that room is mandated by law to report the incident. And part of the problem is, as you said, that there were 5. I probably can guarantee there were more across the country and across that state in Minnesota where these procedures had taken place and the child had survived. And we've heard horrific stories that just keep you up at night where these children have survived abortion attempts and there's no mandate to record it and to save the child's life, which I just think that is unconscionable. So I think in the state of Florida, we've had a few voluntary reportings, but that needs to change because people so often think that this is an issue that isn't an issue. And clearly, as you've shown with this report and what we know from voluntary reporting, this is a real issue. And it comes down to who we are as a society, because certainly abortion, I believe, is wrong. But when you look at an abortion that has been botched and these children survive and the doctor continues to allow this child to suffer and it is murdered outside of the womb, well, that's murder. And we need to call it for what it is. So we have a lot more work to do in so many ways within the movement. And I think the sanctity of life is something that's going to be top of mind as we move forward into these midterms, but also as we move through leading as the pro-life generation.
Yeah, so important to get these issues out there and get people informed so they can make the best decisions possible. We talked about the law. There's already a law on the books. It's pretty clear that it is illegal for any abortion provider to trade in or sell body parts or fetal tissue from an abortion. But take a look at this, a little clip we have of a Planned Parenthood executive talking about doing just that. Let's play this quickly.
This clinic is selling it, so this clinic is making money off of this. Okay, so when you are or the employer is determining what that is monetary, yes.
A direct discussion of this going on. We know there are some records that Senator Grassley made public, yet no prosecutions. What can Congress do to make sure that law gets enforced going forward?
I don't know how anyone in good conscience can actually have a discussion about monetizing human parts. This is an infant. This is a living human being. And my stomach is in knots. Absolutely disgusting that this is actually something that we are witnessing in 2022. I think Congress has a major role to play in, you see, of course, that was Planned Parenthood, in defunding Planned Parenthood. There's absolutely no room whatsoever for federal taxpayer dollars to be going towards this organization that is not dedicated to women's health care. It's dedicated to the murder of innocent children. And I am so sick and tired of hearing about this is women's empowerment and this is for science or this is for that. No, there is a hard line that we draw in the sand and say that this is absolutely unconscionable. Congress should never allow this. There has been legislation to defund Planned Parenthood, but until Republicans take the House back, it is going to be stalled out. So we have got to do everything we can to educate people so they know exactly what Planned Parenthood and others in this industry are doing in the buying and selling and trading of human parts. And I mean, again, it makes me sick to have this even come out of my mouth, but that to me is absolutely unconscionable. And until people can see that should never be allowed, and to add insult to injury at the behest using, taxpayer dollars, this is going to persist. All the more reason why people need to be involved in the movement, get engaged, and help us take back the House and Senate so that we can actually protect life the way that it was intended to be protected as our founding fathers saw fit.
Yeah, and you're putting your money where your mouth is. You have the American Grit PAC. It's endorsing lots of pro-life women to get them in Congress, get them into other public policy decisions. Tell us what's going on there. We got about 90 seconds left.
I'm so excited about the American Grit PAC. We are looking for candidates and helping candidates across the country that are maybe not your most traditional candidates. They have been stay-at-home moms. They are small business owners. They are firefighters, police officers, veterans. And they come to the table with so much, but most importantly, grit. And that's what it's going to take to get our country back, is that blue collar, do whatever it takes mentality to really put the special interests aside and fight for what's right, because they believe in our Constitution, our country, and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to the T. So I'm so proud to endorse the candidates that are part of Team Grit, and there's so much more to come. This group will be responsible for helping take the House back. And so if you're out there, support these candidates. They are wonderful, wonderful human beings, and they are going to be game changers in the 118th Congress in 2023.
How about that? That's an exciting thing. About 20 seconds left. There's a lot of talk about the midterm elections. Liberals think they're going to get energy from the Roe v. Wade reversal. I actually think conservatives might. What are you hearing on the ground?
Listen, when I go home, Biden has botched this economy so bad that when I go home, people are talking to me about the fact that gas is crazy high and that groceries are getting slim at the grocery store and that seniors can't afford their rent. People are really concerned about the kitchen table issues. And so the social issues that the left is trying to push on the American people, they're not a top of mind issue that are driving people to the polls this November. So I feel very confident that Republicans, we know economics, we're going to get it right. We're going to take our country back in November.
Everybody's going to be watching very closely about a historic election ahead of us. Congresswoman, always great to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John. Appreciate you.
You as well. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When I come back, my good friend Jessica Anderson, Executive Director for Heritage Action for America, she's going to join us next to tell us what's going on at the grassroots right after this. Welcome back, everybody. Joining us right now is one of my good friends, Jessica Anderson, the Executive Director for Heritage Action for America, our proud partner and sponsor for the show tonight. Jessica, always a privilege to have you on the show.
John, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's an honor. This has been such a great discussion, and I want to turn to the states, the grassroots, because now that the big government, federal government, has been pushed aside by the Supreme Court, abortion becomes a states' rights issue. Tell us what's going on in the states right now as people digest this ruling and try to implement it in the laws of the great states of America.
Thanks, John. So what's happened over the last few weeks after the Dobbs decision so decisively came down and overturned Roe v. Wade and sent the decision of abortion and protecting life to states, you have two different buckets going on. One, you have about 26 states all across the country that already had some sort of law on their books as it came to protecting life. Of those 26 states, 13 states actually had what's called trigger laws or spring forward laws. They were conditional laws that would only go into place if Roe was overturned. So that bucket of states is actually in a really great shape, John, because they've got laws on the books that protect life, and they're doing it in really magnificent ways. Two cool things have actually happened from that. Georgia, which was a state that had a law in place that was running through their state Supreme Court, actually was decided this week that it could be the law of the land. And that Georgia law is extraordinary and has great protections for protecting life. SB A-List, which, as we all know, is a great friend and leader of the pro-life movement, they actually estimate that of the 26 states that have laws on their books, that already, since the Dobbs case, over 110,000 babies have been saved. So it's awesome that so many states were prepared. And then now we've got the rest of the states, 30 or so, that have kind of either they're going to become these abortion havens like a California or New York or Michigan, unfortunately. And then other states that have begun to call a special session, John, to actually take up this issue now before the fall. And that's what we see in South Carolina, in Indiana, and Oklahoma, and some of these other states that have called for these specials just this year.
Yeah, amazing. It's an incredibly dynamic moment in American history. Now, you have been pro-life your whole life. You have a lot of personal experience with you, your family, and those around you. Tell us a little bit about how important pregnancy resource centers are to the women in the middle of this debate.
Yeah, thanks, John. I don't get to talk about this often, but I actually grew up in a very pro-life family. My mom has been on the front lines of the care side, running pregnancy resource centers, both in the great state of Florida, where I'm from, and then here in Virginia. And so my entire life, I've seen modeled for me just the power and the kindness and the empathy that comes with these pregnancy resource centers, where not only do they show these women, these abortion-minded women, the science of pregnancy, they show that ultrasound, they show that baby in utero, but they actually meet them with compassion, and they talk about a holistic view of helping that woman, whether she needs a job or she needs to go back to school or she needs additional childcare or she just needs baby supplies. And so the role of the Pregnancy Resource Center, and there are centers all across the country that are thriving. They want to help protect life, and they want to help support the woman that has found herself in this position and get her through this tunnel, ultimately giving birth to the baby, and then exposing her to great options like adoption if she's not able to keep the baby herself.
Yeah, such an important thing. And right now, those centers are coming in under both verbal and physical attack, even though they're doing such common sense work. I mean, most everyday Americans say that's exactly what we want to make available to everyday women. There's a lot of rhetoric. There's a lot of myths and facts that get distorted, particularly in the mainstream media today as this debate heats up, that all abortions are safe for women. That's not true. The pro-life movement only cares about being pro-birth. They don't really care about pro-child. None of that's really true. How are you and Heritage Action for America fighting some of that misinformation?
Well, the best way to fight the smear campaign from the left is just to pound with the facts. And so we have a number of resources available on our website, heritageaction.com, and it includes really detailed myth and fact sheets. So not only do you know exactly how the Dobbs case will impact your state, but you can fight back against some of these lies, everything from how the ruling would affect a septic pregnancy, if a mother's life was in jeopardy. I mean, you just saw so much distortion and very dangerous lies. It's not just rhetoric, John, because it ends up actually hurting women that should be having life-saving care from the doctor. And now the doctor has politicized the most intimate part, frankly, of healthcare, which is when a woman is visiting her OB to get checked on and to have care for her baby. And so we want to cut through all of that. We've got a great number of resources so you know exactly what the details are. And especially when it comes to these pregnancy resource centers, which, as you mentioned, have been under fire and attack from the left. That couldn't be true. I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth. These are truly women's healthcare centers, and everyone, regardless of partisan persuasion, should be supporting care for women on the front lines like they do. So know the facts. It's the best way to fight back and to have these really important conversations at the local grassroots level.
Yeah, so important. One of the myths has been, since the ruling came out, that America is now a third world country when it comes to abortion, but it's really not true. America is only one of 5 countries in the world where you can legally get abortion after 24 weeks. How has the left tried to ignore that really extraordinary fact?
Yeah. The left has, and so have leaders from Europe. I mean, Meghan and Harry were comparing America's abortion laws to England's and to the rest of Europe. And it's like, look at the laws that you have on your books. If anything, we're more sane because we're now being very thoughtful about the decision when it comes to protecting life. It is at the state level, closest to the people. And of course, there's a role for the federal government, too. And that's where you've seen, I think, Congress take up 2 really important pieces of legislation. First, the Born Alive Infant Survivors Protection Act, which has a discharge petition with wide support across Congress on the House side. And then second, the Heartbeat Bill, which acknowledges that life begins not only at conception, but that you then can support the baby at heartbeat. If you were to drop dead on the floor, John, the first thing I do is check to see if you had a pulse. It's the same thing. We want to support babies at heartbeat.
Yeah, such an important thing. Now, you guys have put together at Heritage Action an amazing info kit. How do people in the states and the grassroots get access to that and become advocates for such a common sense piece of legislation?
Well, we need help both in terms of supporting the state lawmakers. If you're in states like South Carolina and Indiana that have those special sessions right now, contact your state lawmaker, urge support for the legislation that's moving through the chambers, read the facts of the bills yourself so you're armed and you're equipped. And then at the federal level, be on the lookout both for this summer and early fall for these bills to hopefully start getting some movement. And certainly, if November goes the way we think it will, John, I think this will be one of the top things that the next leadership in the House brings forward as a way to show that all conservatives, all Republicans are united in protecting life and protecting the health care of women. And so we need the help. You can join the team at heritageaction.com and learn all of this information and get plugged into our task force and our sentinels all across the country that are working to advocate for these policies, both at the state and the federal level.
Yeah, this is an amazing time in history, and a lot of the future of America is going to be decided in the next few months. I want to ask you, we got about a minute left, real quickly. The Democrats in Congress are already trying to federalize an issue that the Supreme Court just told them just a few weeks ago is a states-only issue. Any of these laws, if they were to get on the books by Joe Biden as president, do you feel confident they're going to be overturned by the Supreme Court given its states' rights position?
You know, the Supreme Court has been really clear about what the role is of states and what the role is of the federal government. And that clarity, members of Congress, specifically those on the extreme progressive left, they need to understand the division. And when you see them just lighting their hair on fire as they've done the last 3 weeks, it's because they don't like the outcome. So they're going to go back, they're going to try to change the rules, they're going to cheat. And then hopefully we're going to have the Supreme Court that will continue to stay strong, lawmakers, both at the congressional and state level, that continue to stay strong and enforce the rule of law such as it exists in this country. That's the bedrock of our great republic, and I'm looking forward to truth winning at the end of the day here.
That it is. Jessica, it's always an honor to have you on. And I also want to thank Heritage Action for making this conversation possible. A lot of media aren't willing to have this conversation. It's an important one, and we're really grateful for the support and the partnership tonight.
Thanks, John, so much for having me. It was awesome.
It really was. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Congresswoman Lisa Mclean from the great state of Michigan is going to join us. She has been an extraordinary voice in the pro-life movement, has a lot to say about what's going on in Washington right after this. Back America, our next guest represents a constituency in a state that could have reverted back to their 1931 trigger law on abortion. However, a Michigan judge has suspended that law while Democrat Governor Whitmer files a motion in the Supreme Court to protect constitutional rights to abortion. The pro-life fight isn't just taking place on the House floor in Congress. It's being held and debated all around this country. Up to 5 million female Michiganders are in the middle of that debate. Joining us right now, Congresswoman Lisa Mclean from the great state of Michigan. Congresswoman, great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Let's start with what's going on in your state. Your state had a long existing trigger law. The Roe v. Wade reversal came down from the Supreme Court. The Democratic leadership of your state is trying to do everything they can to avoid enforcing that. Your thoughts on what's going on in the great state of Michigan?
It's extremely disheartening. You know, this administration in our state, our legislature, is completely radical. They are radical left. They have been known to subvert the legislation, the constitutional laws. Unfortunately, this doesn't surprise me. But at the end of the day, they were elected to represent the people. And at the end of the day, let's put it to the people's voice and let's put it to a vote. We all took an oath to uphold the Constitution, and we need to do that. Even if we don't like it, we need to respect the document in which we took an oath to uphold.
Yeah, such a great point. And I think the Founding Fathers always intended for we, the people, to make the final decisions. It's interesting to watch the elitists try to grab that away from the American people. I want to start with something that the Supreme Court was really clear that this is an issue that belongs in the states. But almost as soon as that ruling came over, Nancy Pelosi, the House, started passing legislation to federalize this issue. Do you think when those pieces of legislation, if they ever get enacted, they're going to be turned down by the courts, that this is just a Pyrrhic exercise by Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah, again, I think it's the Democrat messaging, it's political theater. And it's typical of when the Democrats don't get what they want. They act like a 3-year-old child that can't get a candy bar from their parents in the middle of the store where they throw a candy from. And they always revert to violence, and they always revert to anger. At the end of the day, let's remember we are talking about human life. And at the end of the day, we were put in place to protect human life. So I really don't understand where all this violence and all this anger is coming from. You know, you spoke earlier on violence against pregnancy centers. These pregnancy centers are set up to help expecting mothers. Why be violent against them? Why trash them? Why, break their windows and do what they're doing? It just doesn't make sense. I don't understand why the Dems are just so angry.
Yeah, and you're right. Those pregnancy centers provide so much important support to women making tough choices, going through the process. It's really amazing that they've become a pariah on the left. They used to be very popular across America, but now the left has demonized them. I want to flip that one around for a second, because Planned Parenthood always says that its centers is about women's health. But as soon as a state moves to restrict or outlaw abortion, they close up those centers. Have they been telling us the truth about really what their centers are about?
I don't think the Dems tell us the truth about much, unfortunately. And this is where I get frustrated. Just give the American people and the people of the state of Michigan the facts. Forget about the opinions. Just give them the facts and let them decide. But again, when you try and manipulate and you try and control that narrative, the American people can see through that. And it's extremely disheartening. It doesn't matter whether it's abortion or any other issue. Americans are seeing through their lies. And it's quite sad.
Yeah, it really is. I want to turn to the misinformation campaign. From the moment the draft opinion leaked to today, there has been all sorts of pieces of misinformation bantied about on the left and even in the mainstream media. Some of the more famous ones: doctors are going to stop treating women that have ectopic pregnancies because of this. Abortion's outlawed in all 50 states. There's been a lot of false information out there. What are Republicans doing to counter that, to make sure that the public is educated and really understands the state of the law right now?
Well, we're doing things just like we're doing today. Is we are trying, and I applaud you for having me on, so thank you, to get the truth out. When you have to scare people to see things your way, that should tell you everything you need to know. We need to stop this fear-mongering and just present the facts. We're not going to stop ectopic pregnancies. And in fact, that's why I'm introducing a resolution in the House right now to set the record straight. And it's called the heartbeat law. Is when you hear the heartbeat of a child, you cannot perform an abortion. So we're not talking about ectopic pregnancies. We're not talking about when the life of the mother is in danger. So again, stop with the fear mongering, because it just doesn't work. And quite frankly, you look foolish.
Yeah, the American people are so much smarter than Democratic politicians often give them credit for. We got about 90 seconds left. I wanted to just ask about this. There are a lot of women that are going to be caught in the crossfires here. They need support as they make decisions, as they try to raise a child, as they look for options to make sure they have enough money to support a child. What are some of the things Republicans are doing to create a welcoming system for expectant mothers?
Well, one, we have these pregnancy centers. So why the Dems want to vandalize, and these groups want to vandalize these pregnancy centers that actually help the expecting mother is beyond me. So one, we need to beef up those pregnancy centers. We need to beef up our adoption centers, because adoption is a healthy alternative. And that's what we need to be focusing on. We just need the Dems to allow us to do that and stop burning the places down.
Yeah, it's amazing. I hope those wise words sink into everyone in America. Congresswoman Lisa Mclean, it's an honor to have you on today. Thank you for your championing of all pro-life causes. It's great to have you on.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by one of the last guests whose voice really matters. Stay tuned to find out who it is when we come back right after these commercial breaks. Welcome back, everybody. We have the perfect guest to wrap things up tonight. Stephen Billy, Vice President of State Affairs for the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life Group, is joining us. Stephen, great to have you on the show today.
Wonderful to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, one of the things we've had over the last hour of conversation, it's really important for those who are in the pro-life movement to be educated, to have the facts, to have this conversation in America. There's so much misinformation out there. How important is it to get facts and information into the hands of the frontline activists so they can counter a lot of what's in the news media today?
It's critical, and it's exactly one of the goals of the Charlotte Lozier Institute, which is the research and education arm of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. LozierInstitute.org. They have phenomenal information to help talk about the science and statistics on all of these issues, really break it down so that people can be educated. And there's two parts of this. We need to make sure that people are educated about what we're talking about. What is abortion? It's the intentional taking of an unborn child's life in the womb. That's what it is. That's what elective abortion is. It's killing a baby. On the back end, we need to talk about the dangers of those abortions, whether it's surgical or chemical abortions, the risk that those abortions pose to mothers. And then also in this new era that we're in the Dobbs era, where life can be protected, the misinformation about whether women are going to be able to get treatments in situations they need them, whether it's an ectopic pregnancy or whether they're experiencing the heartbreak of a miscarriage. The pro-abortion activists are out there saying that women aren't going to be able to get the care that they need in those situations. And it's a dangerous misinformation that they're spreading. It's going to cause doctors to be hesitant to provide the care. It's going to cause women to be scared about getting the care. And it's not true. It just simply isn't the case that women can't get that care when they need it.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things Senator Marshall made clear really right at the top of this show, that is one of the falsehoods that have been bantied about since the Supreme Court ruling. Let me take on another one of those, because you mentioned the research that you guys are doing. President Biden recently said that abortion pills are really safe and they should be everywhere. But in fact, there are some strong studies that you guys have done that showed that there's a significantly higher rate of emergency room visits, 22% greater risk of ER visit for any reason for a woman who's taken an abortion pill, 53% greater risk of an ER visit for an abortion-related reason. How does that statistic not get into the news media more?
It's unfortunate that academia and the media are both carrying the water for this pro-abortion narrative that chemical abortions are safe. And we've seen headlines out there that chemical abortions are as safe as Tylenol. It simply isn't true. That's not true. Chemical abortions are very dangerous. When you look at the data we have in America, first of all, we have probably 15% of abortions that happen never even get reported. So there's no way that complications from those abortions get reported. The complication data that the FDA has is voluntary. And it's often the emergency room doctor, not the abortionist, who sees the complication. So they don't know that that's necessarily the cause. They don't put it forward into the voluntary reporting system. We're missing so much data about the complications. So what we did is we used Medicaid claims data from the states that pay for abortions with state taxpayer dollars. And we looked at over 400,000 abortions that occurred. And then we drilled down and looked at chemical abortions. And we saw if there was a charge or a claim for chemical abortions, and then subsequent to that, we were able to see who ended up in the emergency room. And the rate of complications leading to emergency room visits from chemical abortions increased over 500% in a 12-year period. It's the largest study of its kind. It's the first study of its kind. And it shows, using hard claims data from Medicaid, that chemical abortions are dangerous.
Yeah, and when you talk about a sample of 400,000, that is huge. Most polls only take about 1,000 people to make projections. That is a really detailed study, and it was peer-reviewed, correct?
Absolutely. That was peer-reviewed. The follow-up to it showed that the dangers of, when we looked at chemical abortions, the complications, 60% of those women are actually miscoded as having a miscarriage. Oftentimes, we think that's because the abortion industry tells women to lie to their doctors. But in doing so, they're only creating additional risk and health safety concerns for those women. The women who were miscoded as having a miscarriage versus complications from their chemical abortion actually saw increased surgery needs after the fact, increased additional visits to the hospital after the fact. So you have the abortion industry lying on the front end saying that chemical abortions are safe. And then because they know there will be complications, they tell women to then go in and lie to their doctors and say, it wasn't a chemical abortion. Tell your doctor it was a miscarriage. That only leads to further complications for those mothers. It is dangerous, and it's a terrible stain, I think, on the conversation that the abortion industry is so committed to getting their profits that they're willing to lie to mothers and have them put themselves in danger.
Yeah, the cycle of mistruths actually has a medical consequence. I think that's one of the things we forget about. There was another famous person that recently made a comment or claim about the likelihood of women dying from pregnancy. Associate Justice of the Supreme Court Sotomayor made some comments here today. Even some of the mainstream media blew the whistle on that. Tell us about what the justice got wrong and what the truth is.
Well, when you look at maternal mortality, the first thing you have to keep in mind, and accepting that every situation is heartbreaking, and it is a tragedy when a woman loses her life in that situation, but it is so rare in America. Oftentimes these studies that we hear about talk about rates or comparisons of different things, but when you look at it, the instances of maternal mortality are so low that even the CDC has notes on their data that say it's very difficult to use our data to make any kind of comparisons or any kind of projections. They don't even create rates for some of the states because you're talking about low single-digit numbers of instances. You can't do science off of that. You can't create data replication. You can't understand what the causes were and then project those causes out across all of the different things that may have been a factor in that situation. So we don't have the maternal mortality data that we need, in part because we have so few maternal mortality deaths, to even try to make comparisons or make statements. There's this claim out there that pregnancy is 14 times more dangerous than abortion. You can't do that math. It's been proven over and over. There are peer-reviewed studies that take down that claim that show we don't have data that supports that claim. And it's unfortunate that claims like that continue to be made when there's no scientific evidence to back them up.
Yeah, so important to knock down these falsehoods. Kamala Harris recently, our vice president, said something pretty provocative, got a lot of blowback. She said, quote, "Every day women are getting pregnant in the U.S. and that's an issue." Your take on what she said?
I guess I don't understand where she would be coming from with that. Certainly life should be cherished. Every life is valuable. We are created by God, and he knows what his plans are for us. And I think what's unfortunate is that we've gotten away from understanding how incredible life is. We no longer treat it the way that it should be treated. We've treated it as if it's an inconvenience to us. We've seen Biden administration officials say that it's a drain on the economy or that it's going to create more government need. All of those are just fundamentally missing the point that we're talking about a human life, a baby who hasn't been born yet, but is going to come into this world and can be loved and cherished. And who knows what possibilities they have before them, what they're going to create, what they're going to achieve, what scientific miracles they'll be able to uncover. And we just have to get back to a place as a culture where we are really cherishing each and every life for how special they are.
Yeah, so important. And to think our vice president would call that an issue, the birth of a baby, an issue, is remarkable. We got about 30 seconds left. Real quickly, only 14 states authorize some form of alternative to abortion, funding life-affirming pregnancy. Why is that? And is that an area where there could be a lot of room for improvement?
We've already seen a number of pro-life governors and pro-life leaders come to the front and say this is something that they want to focus on. When we look at pregnancy centers, we've seen, each year they're serving millions of women, millions of dads, millions of families. They're serving with hundreds of millions of dollars in services and counseling and teaching. We just released a study that showed in a 5-year period, those pregnancy centers actually saved 800,000 lives. Amazing. They were able to engage with women who are abortion-minded or abortion vulnerable, and in working with them, show them the reality of what their child would be when he's born, give them the support that they need, really stand with mothers so that they can carry their pregnancy to term and love their child, versus what the abortion industry and what the Democrats say is the solution. They say, kill your baby, and that'll be the end of your problems. They don't worry about the health risk, the mental health risk, the physical health risk, and it's unfortunate. And I'm glad to see more conservative governors, more pro-life leaders coming to the front to stand with women.
Yeah, that's going to be a trend line we're going to be watching closely over the next year. Stephen Billy, we really appreciate your time today. Thanks for helping put a lot of perspective as we wrap up today's show.
Thanks so much for having me, John.
Great honor to have you on. Folks, it's hard to believe the hour went by, but that's what happens when you're having an important conversation like the one we've just had. It is clear the historic Dobbs ruling in the Supreme Court is going to resonate for years to come in America. And as it does, and states decide where they stand on allowing abortions, one key takeaway from tonight's guest is that it is essential to be educated. There is a lot of emotion and a lot of misinformation on this issue being spread by politicians and news media members. Getting the facts is the first and best step for being effective. We hope that we helped a little bit with that mission tonight. And with that, we wish you a good night and ask that God bless you, your family, and this great nation. Thanks for watching.